Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
The Money Show
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
On 92.7 or 106 FM and DSTV channel 856.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025. Tonight on The Money Show, you'll be joined by myself, Motheo Khoaripe, in for Stephen Grootes, just capping off the week that was in terms of business and wrapping up all the business stories tonight. We look at a fledgling Apple producer in South Africa, 6 years old, but already shooting the lights out in the international market. Akala du Toit, procurement manager at True Cape and chair of Big Bugs Growers Association, will join us for that conversation. Then B20 South Africa championing the continent's wide growth at Africa CEO Forum. Dr Anthony Costa, the Head of Secretariat for B20 South Africa, joining us for that conversation. Now, markets commentary, Grant Nader, portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers, will take us through all the market movers tonight. While in our Friday file, Mabotho Africa, the luxury leather goods company, joins us for our Friday file conversation, talking to Thobekile Mkhize, the founder and CEO of Mabotho Africa. We'll also have the Friday Biz Blitz, taking you through your paces when it comes to the information we've shared on the show this week. So stay tuned for The Money Show. Let's talk money.
And now, The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
Earlier this week, Deputy Finance Minister David Masondo talking about maybe an announcement coming soon of different inflation targeting for the South African Reserve Bank. Both parties, the South African Reserve Bank as well as Treasury, have been talking about a different kind of inflation targeting for the country, looking at the 3% mark. The last time the South African Reserve Bank cut the repo rate by 0.25 percentage points was in January. And that left us at 7.5% and 11% in terms of the prime lending rate. Since then, the central bank has been very cautious, given the uncertainty caused by the higher tariffs, opting to hold rates unchanged in March. But property industry thought leader Samuel Seif says the cautious approach is stifling growth. And he chats to me now. Thank you for joining us, Samuel. Just talking around the roller coaster ride that's been the global and local economy and the missed opportunity of that held interest rate in March. Do you think that the cutting then of interest rates, especially aggressively this year, could see South Africa at a point where we have enough growth to start creating those jobs?
Good evening, Motheo. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm just struggling to understand the play from the governor of the Reserve Bank. We're sitting in a country which has 32% unemployment. It's gone up 1% to 33%. We've had 300,000 people have lost jobs in the last quarter. We've got the biggest differential between interest rates that the public are paying and the inflation rate, one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world. And there's no talk about reducing rates. It just makes no sense to me why we're fixed or fixated on having a low inflation rate whilst you have to do everything, one would think you would, in your power to ensure that we grow the economy, that we grow the GDP, and we start giving jobs, particularly to those who need them most, those unemployed. How are they ever going to get into the job market? How is the economy and the country going to grow with the interest rates at the levels they are? It makes no sense to me.
I mean, when you look at that inflation number at 2.7% below the target range for the South African Reserve Bank, but also the despairing gap with the interest rates at 7.5%, surely those two should be closely married to each other at this point. looking at the next meeting, which is at the end of this month, we still have the concerns that the SARB has talked about in terms of the higher interest rates and how volatile the market has been. But do you think our Governor Lesetja Kganyago should be more brave and say, look, we're starting another cutting cycle in order to salvage the economy in South Africa?
Absolutely. I understand his mandate is to ensure that inflation doesn't get out of control. But we haven't seen inflation out of control for months now. And, the last was below 3%. Then we were at 3%. Would it be that difficult for that if our inflation was 4 or 5%, but our interest rates came down from 11% where they are now down to 10%, down to 9%, leaving still a gap between inflation and interest rates, but doing something to stimulate the economy. This makes no sense to me as to why we can't see that purely has got to be the most important and pressing factor for us, is to grow the economy and give people jobs.
You're one of the bigger players in the South African property sector with CEF Property Group. How has this impacted you, the higher interest rates over a long time? Has that hit the market? Are people now too cautious to get in and buy new properties?
Yeah, so it certainly has had that effect. I mean, if you'd have bought when interest rates were down at 7% during the 2020 to 2021 period, after COVID and the lockdowns, everybody came in. If you just looked at our transactions on a monthly basis, they were down at 17,000 during 2020. That was because we couldn't trade for a good period of the year with the lockdowns, etc. They shot up to 23,000 transactions per month when the rate was between 7 and 7.25%. They've come down steadily, down to 22.5 and down to 18,000 for the last 2 years when our interest rates went up. So I'm not talking about this only for the property market, and you can already see that when the rates came from 11.75% down to 11%, there was a quite a marked increase both in interest and sales in the Gauteng region specifically, but right across the country. But if we reduced rates even more, that would show a significant growth. But it's not only for the property market that I'm talking. I'm talking
about the general
about
economy.
Correct. The general economy and the investment in everything. We do need to invest in our infrastructure. There's talk about public-private partnerships. They will have to borrow money. When you're borrowing money at the rate that it is, when it could be significantly less, that is impeding the growth and impeding the employment.
All right, that Samuel CEF, chairman of CEF Property Group, talking about the possibility of cutting more aggressively in terms of interest rates to spur on the South African economy.
The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702.
702.
Let's compare apples with apples now, talking to Carla du Toit, a procurement manager at True Cape and the chair of Big Bucks Growers Association, talking about a business that's really done well for itself after just 6 years in the market. They're an apple producer that's really shooting out the lights in the international market. Carla du Toit, welcome again to the Money Show.
Good evening, Motheo, and good evening to your listeners.
I mean, tell us more about Big Bucks and this apple variant that seems to be popular in the international market.
Yeah, Motheo, it's a beautiful story about this full red gala strain. It was found as a mutant of raw gala in an orchard in Elgin way back in January 2011, and it was found by a gentleman, Mr. Buxnell, who was doing varietal development for True Cape. And he was walking through the orchard, and his eye caught this bright red apple, and it appeared to be a mutant. And we started to propagate the specific branch, and the rest is history. I mean, we tested it for a few years, and it seemed to be stable. And growers planted it in a very big way throughout the South African fruit industry. And this year we've exported more than 1 million cartons. Can you believe that?
Now, commercial orchards were planted in 2017 and export trials followed up in 2019. Just how much work goes behind introducing a new a variant like this in terms of the market?
There's a massive amount of work going into it, because you have to test mutant. Firstly, you have to make sure it's stable. In other words, there's no variation when you start to propagate the specific branch, and that normally takes you about 3 to 4 years. And then you have to start make trees, and obviously you have to convince growers to invest in it. And but the appearance of the apple was so striking that it was really easy to convince growers to invest in the apple. And today it's absolutely a winner. Specifically in India, in China, we've sold a lot, and I think the apple have done the South African apple industry a massive favor. It really put us on the map.
What is the future looking like? You know, are you getting calls from other growers around the world who feel they have the similar climate and could maybe produce their own variant of this apple?
Yeah, Motheo, there's a lot of interest. There was interest from the beginning from a country like Chile. They're also a very big apple producing country. Indian growers have now started to plant it, and there's plantings in the US as well. So there's definitely interest from all over the globe. It's a gala. Now for most listeners would know Royal Gala quite well, but this one is a bit different. It's full red and bright red, so its appearance is very striking. So you get the grower gets a higher pack out, and when the pack out is higher, obviously the commercial value is higher of the orchard as well.
All right, that was Carla du Toit, procurement manager at True Cape and chair of Big Bucks Growers Association, talking to us about the Flash Gala apple that's recently sold 1 million cartons of apples across the world. So doing quite well in the very, very tough and competitive market. Of course, South Africa recently surpassing Chile as one of the biggest exporters of apple.
702 and Cape Talk.
Motheo is on X
At Motheo_Khoaripe.
This week, we had the Africa CEO Forum. President Cyril Ramaphosa was also there. Of course, South Africa quite busy on the international calendar, pushing, of course, the G20 meeting happening later this year, but this time using Business 20 South Africa to do so, to carry out the message for South Africa, but not only South Africa, the rest of the continent in terms of investment and policy action. Dr. Anthony Costa was there, the Head of Secretariat for B20 South Africa, joins us now for this conversation, our Friday explainer. Dr. Anthony Costa, if anybody doesn't understand B20 in just one simple line, what is it and how important is it to the later G20 meeting we have this year?
Hi, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about our work. The B20, quite simply, is the business engagement platform for the G20. It represents businesses across the G20 and provides a voice for business globally for input into the G20 processes.
When we look at the task that you have at hand this year, I mean, getting all these players around the world to sit around one table and discuss policy and business, especially in favor of the continent, because we do have the presidency this year. What kind of conversations are being had around investment on the continent? Because the language is always off when we're not at the table. There's a lot of talk on risk and wars and all the negative things. But what positive elements are being spoken about this time with the B20?
I think the starting point is that business is a essential stakeholder when it comes to the work of the G20. The policies, the discussions, the decisions taken by the G20 will influence business, and indeed businesses are essential for the governments that are represented by the G20. So we've seen a great desire by the diverse groupings you mentioned earlier to participate in our Business 20 or B20 process. Because the world, I think, is facing such challenges and uncertainty, the attraction of a platform that gives business an opportunity to work together to try and find constructive solutions and approaches is needed more than ever this year, and we're certainly benefiting from the desire of businesses to address this. I think there's also a recognition that this is the first time Africa is hosting the G20 in its current format, and of course the B20. It's a historic occasion, and that the next great potential around economic growth is going to come from Africa. It's got the youngest population. It's going to be a significant contributor to demand as well as production by 2050, and developments such as the African Continental Free Trade Area have the potential to unlock an enormous economic opportunity.
A lot of opportunity on the table. B20 South Africa, of course, championing the continent-wide growth at Africa CEO Forum earlier this week, calling for smart investments and some policy action. Of course, it is Africa's time, and being the host of the B20 and then subsequently the G20 meeting this year, we're all on the table sitting there, hopefully, telling the rest of the world that South Africa and the rest of the continent is ready for business. Dr. Anthony Costa, the Head of Secretariat for B20 South Africa.
The Money Show.
The markets.
It's been about 2.5 days of negative trades for the JSE, but today the JSE ending the day in positive territory, up 280 points was the all-share. Grant Nader, portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers, joins us for the market roundup for this Friday. A lot of weakness on the market, especially after the announcement of that China-US trade deal. A lot of losses for gold. Of course, it's not the haven anymore because a lot of uncertainty has gone away from the market. But looking at Richmond's results today, they were up 7%, reporting quite solid results given the weaker global economy.
Yeah. Good evening. Certainly, the gold is holding up really well, considering it's hit multiple all-time highs in this whole drama that's playing out. You've got better peace prospects in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine. You've got tariffs easing. And among all of those things, you still have gold holding up. So I think although it's pulled back, even the moves it's had, it's actually trading really well. And as for the rest of the markets, a lot of these markets ran well ahead of all this news, and there's a nice process of digestion that's happening. I think the price action on balance for me is actually really good. There's not a lot of selling. Guys are buying the sort of opportunistically on anything that has a reasonable pullback. And so I think the market's building a nice base around these levels. And I like the price action. I think it's quite positive.
How does someone play it now? Because there's been a lot of noise, a lot of uncertainty on international and local markets around the higher tariffs, but a lot of deals also being struck more recently and tariffs being paused. So for somebody who was sitting on their hands and now wants to go back to the market, where do they begin?
Well, look, I mean, if you sold, I think it becomes really difficult here because, the market's had this massive run. I think if you held on and you have more to deploy, I don't think you need to try and be too clever. I would start putting money to work in some of the good businesses. I think the positive news will continue on balance, but expect pockets of negative news as well. It's not, we know the nature of the beast, and overnight things can change. So expect some volatility and look for opportunity. But given the broad-based nature of the buying, it says to me there's a lot more people interested on the buy side than there were a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a real rally. The big debate is whether this is a bull trap or whether it's actually genuinely, we've seen the lows and we're off. And I honestly don't know, but looking at the price action, looking at the way the market is trading and the volumes, I think we've seen the lows, and even if we have a pullback, I don't think we go lower than the prior lows that we saw a month ago.
We have the Budget 3.0 coming up next week. You think it's going to shake the local market given there's been a lot of stability of late?
No, I think the budget will be okay this time. There's been so much information drip-fed into the market. We kind of know where we are on this. We can expect some fiscal slippage. We can expect VAT not to come through. And as long as those things, there's not a major fiscal slippage and there's not a VAT surprise again, the market will take confidence from the fact that there's a resemblance of a GNU once again, that they came to an agreement on something. And that, I think, is a slight positive. And I really think that's been priced in, to be honest.
Right, that was Grant Nader, portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers, looking at the markets this evening. Karoo, the owners of Cartrack, up 16%. Super Group, up 7.5%. The luxury group, Richmond, up 7% after releasing results, up 103 billion rand in terms of its earnings this afternoon. Sasol, up 3.5%, with Redefine amongst the winners. Not the best of days for Pan-African Resources. They were down 5%, with Anglo down 3%, Thungela down 2%, with Pepco, another retailer, down 1.5%.
Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
The Money Show.
The Friday File.
The Friday File.
Getting into the world of luxury in our Friday File, speaking about bags, shoes, and everything got to do with leather and quality South African hides. Thobekile Mkhize, the founder and CEO of Mabotho Africa, joining us for our Friday File today. She, of course, specializes in creating luxury leather goods, including handbags, shoes, and some home decor from locally sourced materials. Thobekile, welcome to The Money Show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I'm a Mosotho man, and I was saying Mabotho Africa. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, it's Mabotho. It's actually an abbreviation. Mabo, it comes from, it's a word that comes from my late father's name. And then the THO, which is To, is from my name, Thobekile. So I actually combined the two words just to honor his legacy.
That's beautiful. And looking at the start of Mabotho Africa and the start of this particular business, why did you decide to go luxury? I mean, you could have been a designer that's looking into everyday wear and looked at fast fashion, but why did you opt for luxury as an option for your business?
The brand is actually inspired by my heritage is Zulu, like you said. But my brand is inspired by the beautiful cattle. We have a cultural celebration with our loved ones.
Let's try, Thobekile, let's try get you on a better line so we can get everyone informed about the product. We'll just call you back, but definitely one of the businesses we're looking at tonight on our Friday File, Mabotho Africa, a luxury leather goods company that uses Nguni cow hides as well as other materials sourced in South Africa to make luxury goods like bags, shoes, and home decor as well. Has gone as far as the US in terms of sales as well. So another one of those exports that we have for that US economy. I know things are quite tight in terms of trade with the US, but we keep making these exceptional goods that should be ready for the US market. We're going to try and get Thobekile on a better line. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Loud and clear. Yeah, so explaining then the use of the Nguni cattle hides that you use for your products.
Hi, sorry, can you repeat that?
I was talking about the Nguni cattle hide that you're using for your luxury products. Why did you decide on that gaze for that for your luxury brand?
I believe in us as designers about telling our African stories. So one of my inspiration was the cattle, which we certainly use when we have cultural celebrations. It's almost like it's a requirement for us to slaughter using a cattle. So that was one of my... It's a beautiful way of telling our story, as well as just giving thanks to the women, mostly, because my product is marketed to women initially. But now, obviously, we're offering products for men as well. But I thought it would be a beautiful way of making these products for, but also tying it up with our stories.
We're having a bit of difficulty, Thobekile, with your line, but I'd like to keep you on it just so you can tell us more about this particular product. You've decided to use those textures of the cow hide. You're not completely using the hide to be full leather, but you're leaving the texture of the fur on it as well. How has that been? How has the response been from customers when they see the texture and the work on the bags?
It's been quite interesting. At first, But I know a lot of designers tend to use the plain leather kind of material. But I intentionally went for fur or hides because it told more of the African story and, of course, our heritage. And also, our brand represents being bold, being brave, being one of the values that we want to showcase. So that's what the actual texture represents as well. And also to embrace people's uniqueness and include everyone in the way that we design. So we're very intentional about how we picked that specific.
Okay, Thobekile, we're going to try you on Zoom since there are a bit of goblins on the telephone line. We'll try to get you on a clearer line. Thobekile, they're telling us about Mabotho Africa, a luxury goods brand that's a fledgling out of Durban. This business, of course, making handbags, shoes, home decor as well. They've gone as far as the US in selling their products, and Thobekile rather still telling us there about the growth of the business, but also the reason why she chose Nguni cattle hide as the chosen material for these luxury goods.
702 and Cape Talk.
Motheo is on X
At Motheo_Khoaripe.
We're still trying, of course, to get back to that Mabotho Africa luxury leather goods conversation. But let's tell you about what happened on the markets today. Tiger Brands are selling its fruits business, Langeberg and Ashton Foods, for around R1. The business will go to a consortium of local fruit producers and also community partners. Tiger Brands has been struggling to manage the commercial viability of the unit, making it largely unsustainable for its business. But Langeberg and Ashton will not go for a steal or that easy. The business requires close to R1 billion to run each year. The new entity will now be the responsible party for those expenses, as well as keeping the 3,000 permanent and seasonal jobs for the workers in the Western Cape. Now, the sale will help Tiger Brands to free up some cash, close to R1 billion. It would have otherwise plowed into the business. The consortium will now hold around 90% of LAF, and while the community trust funded by Tiger Brands will hold around 10%. The major food producer will fund the trust with some R150 million, while the trust will also focus on socio-economic development in the Langeberg area in the Western Cape. So not just R1, but close to R1 billion in terms of running that business. But luckily, those 3,000 jobs saved through this particular process.
The Money Show.
The Friday File.
The Friday File.
And in our Friday File today, we're looking at Mabotho Africa, luxury leather goods, a company that's using local cattle hide to produce some of the best bags, shoes, and home decor as well. We have, of course, Thobekile Mkhize, the founder and CEO, also the creative director at Mabotho Africa. Are we on a better line now without gremlins, Thobekile?
Hello. Yes.
Far clearer. This sounds like luxury. Yeah. Let's talk about the bags and why you chose this particular texture. Are you looking past cow hides? Are you using things like maybe crocodile skins, things that are readily available in our market?
Initially, we have always been intentional about So initially, we've always been intentional about the material that we use and the patterns. So we started off by focusing on the hides because they promote more of our African history, our culture, and heritage. But we do offer other a variety of products made from different types of material, which is your crocodile and obviously your plain leather skins and so forth.
There's a big debate around the world, especially when it comes to fashion. There's a lot of fast fashion going around. The likes of Inditex, the owners of Zara, really questioned around their practices producing too many clothes. And of course, you don't play in that market, but are you also, looking to make your products more eco-friendly? Are you speaking to what the market demands in terms of making sure that there aren't any sweatshops in making such great products?
Oh, yes, definitely. So we were when I created the brand, I really didn't want to focus on more on, I wanted to be as authentic as possible, meaning that I didn't want to go to China and go and make my products and come back to South Africa and rebrand it. So what we wanted to do is to tell our story, starting from home in the rural areas, where the brand was conceived, and also just focusing on making it as sustainable as possible, and also being aware of that we have cultural practices that take place, obviously, in the African culture and all the celebrations that we have. And one of the things that was so concerning to me is that we have all the skins and the remains that, after slaughter that takes place, and then, the skins remain as not being able to be used properly. So I thought to myself, how about we, instead of throwing away, obviously, all these skins, how about we create beautiful products? And being a woman and loving luxury, beautiful things and loving bags, I thought this was the best way for me to start with something that I truly know and I'm truly passionate about. And that's how then it was formed. So initially I was not focusing at, what mass production or what everybody else is doing. The focus was just on creating sustainable products that will be consumed by, obviously, not only local consumers, but also for global markets as well.
Are you focusing more on standalone stores, and are you available online? What has the response been elsewhere in the world to some of your great work?
So we are focusing on selling our products online, and being also a global brand, obviously we have to have some visibility and accessibility online, which is obviously through selling at our through our website store. And we also have a store. We've just opened one in Shongweni Mall in KZN. It's a new mall. So it's one of our success stories. And also we do a lot of trade shows, both locally. We also previously been involved with Decorex, showcased our products there, as well as have been lucky enough to be chosen by DTI to participate at various trade shows internationally. So I think we've done about 8 countries, and that's how we want to be known and still tell our African story, so that one day we can have stores in other big malls, like in Dubai Mall and in various malls out there in the world.
All right, that was our Friday file. Mabotho Africa, the luxury leather goods company making handbags, shoes, and home decor using locally sourced material here in South Africa. Thobekile Mkhize, the founder and CEO of that company.
You're with Motheo Khoaripe on 702 and Cape Talk.
It's about that time, close to the Friday Biz Blitz, and I'm ready for the first question, hoping that you are. If you want to answer it, you can call us on 021-446-0567 or 011-883-0702. The first question: which JSE-listed company was blamed for the 2017-2018 listeriosis outbreak? Which JSE-listed company was blamed for the 2017-2018 listeriosis outbreak? I also just mentioned them about 5 to 10 minutes ago. So if you're listening, you'll know this particular answer. If you want to get involved, call us on 011-883-0702 or 021-446-0567. The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. Absa is a proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa 2025. Time now for our Friday Biz Blitz. First question: which JSE-listed company was blamed for the 2017-2018 listeriosis outbreak? I want that answer to that question. Imtiaz from Santon ready to get involved. Imtiaz, do you know the answer to that question?
Tiger Brands.
Tiger Brands is the correct answer. The company also signaling they will be ready to have that settlement ready in that lawsuit. Tiger Brands, of course, blamed for the listeriosis outbreak that caused a lot of sickness and deaths in the South African market. Let's see if you can get the second question then, Imtiaz. Blue Label Telecoms is the parent company to which mobile operator? Blue Label Telecoms is the parent company to which mobile operator? This could be tricky. Not tricky for Imtiaz. He knows the answer to that question. Of course, the answer there is Cell C. The shares at Blue Label are jumping almost 10% in earlier trade after the telecoms company announced plans to restructure the group and a separation and potential future listing of Cell C on the JSE. Third time lucky, Patrick Dlamini takes over from Abel Sithole as the CEO of which asset manager? Patrick Dlamini takes over from Abel Sithole as CEO of which asset manager in the country?
That would be the PIC, Public Investment Corporation.
Yes, the Public Investment Corporation. Imtiaz has been listening to The Money Show all week. The decision comes after a 7-month global search. Dlamini was the former CEO of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and where he served for a decade. I think 3 solid questions, 3 solid answers. Imtiaz walks away then with the bragging rights for the Friday Biz Blitz for this week. Congratulations. Jazzy music there from Peter. I'm loving it for the Friday Biz Blitz. But now time is 7 o'clock. You can enjoy the best bits of The Money Show after the news. But for now, let's get in on those headlines.